What if the home you grew up in, with its lavender-scented yard and glowing dinner table, was a stage for a quiet betrayal? I'm Jasmine Carter, born in a sleepy Oregon suburb where the world saw a perfect family, white picket fence, neat lawn, and all. But behind the curtains of our cozy house, I learned early that love could be measured, weighed, and withheld. From my first steps, I was a project, not a daughter, and when my sister arrived, I became a shadow. This is the story of how I stepped into the light. Our house on Maple Street was a postcard of middle-class America. The front yard bloomed with lavender, buzzing with bees in summer, and the white picket fence stood crisp against the green. Inside, under warm chandelier light, we ate meatloaf and mashed potatoes, the clink of forks, a soft rhythm. To neighbors, we were the Carters, Mark and Linda with their two girls, a model of suburban bliss. But I saw the cracks. My father, Mark, a software engineer with a love for numbers, dreamed of a child who could solve equations as easily as he did. My mother, Linda, had read 40 parenting books before I was born, her shelves heavy with titles like Raising Genius. They wanted brilliance, and I was their first experiment. I was 3 when I felt their disappointment settle like dust. I couldn't count to 20 or write my name neatly, my chubby fingers smudging the paper. One evening, I overheard Linda in the kitchen, her voice sharp with caution. "Mark, she's not learning as fast as we hoped. We need to intervene before we miss the golden stage." My father nodded, his eyes sliding over me as I played with blocks. I was a math problem that didn't add up, a puzzle not worth solving. Their words stung, but I didn't yet know how to name the ache. I just kept building my towers, hoping one day they'd see me. Then Claire arrived, 4 years after me, and the house changed. Linda became a new woman, her eyes bright with purpose. The living room was filled with brain-boosting toys, colorful stacking rings, emotion flashcards, even a musical high chair that played Mozart. Claire was their masterpiece. I remember sitting in the corner, my Legos scattered when Linda walked by with Claire in her arms. "She's only 7 months and already responds to 3-step sequences," she said, glancing at me. "You never say mine, Jasmine, keep playing." Her words landed like a stone in my chest. Claire's toys came from Sweden, her books from elite catalogs. I had a stubby pencil and a workbook, my efforts met with sighs. By the time I was 6, I knew my place, present but unseen, like a ghost in my own home. The lavender outside still bloomed, but inside I was already wilting, waiting for someone to notice. As a child, I thought love was something you earned, like a gold star on a spelling test. But in our house, love was a spotlight, and it always shone on Claire. While I faded into the background, my sister was sculpted into a prodigy, her every coup and scribble a triumph. By the time I was 12, I'd learned to live in the dark, but the cost of that lesson carved deep wounds. This is how I became a shadow, and how I began to fight my way out. Claire's world was a treasure chest of opportunity. Her high chair sang lullabies in 3 languages, her fabric books arrived from Sweden, and by age 2, a Montessori tutor came twice weekly to nurture her gifted mind. I had pre-printed workbooks, their corners curling, and a pencil so short my fingers cramped. At 8, I won 2nd place in a school art contest, my painting of a sunset glowing with oranges and pinks. I ran home, heart bursting, and held it up to Linda. She barely looked. "Claire read an entire short story today," she said, turning back to her coffee. Mark was downstairs, installing a logic puzzle board for Claire, his silence louder than words. My painting went on the fridge, but only because I taped it there myself. Each dismissal taught me to expect nothing, no praise, no proud glances. I swallowed my hurt, but it grew heavy inside me. The breaking point came when I was 12. My room was my haven, upstairs with a window framing the forest behind our house. Morning light slipped through the blinds in soft beams, warming my drawings pinned to the walls. It was the only place I felt whole. One evening, as I hung a new sketch, Claire barged in. "Mom says I'm moving up here. This room's bigger, and I need space for my study corner." I stared, thinking it was a joke. "No," I said, my voice firm. "This is my room." Claire shrugged and left. The next day, I came home from school to find my world upended. My books, clothes, and drawings were crammed into the tiny room by the laundry, its walls cold and bare. The bed touched one wall, and the desk was too small for my lamp. Claire's name now adorned my old room, her new study desk gleaming white, piled with learning tools. I stood in the doorway, fists clenched, tears burning. "Mom," I called, voice shaking. "Why would you do this? That was my room since I was little." Linda didn't turn from the dishes. "You're older, Jasmine. Claire needs it more. Don't make a scene." I shut the door to my new room, the hallway light a pale sliver under it. For the first time, I felt truly erased. I became a ghost in the Carter house, present but invisible. Claire's achievements, spelling bees, piano recitals, filled every conversation. My report cards, always solid, were glanced at and forgotten. I stopped sharing my small victories, like the time I aced a math test or joined the debate club. Linda's daily reminders to try harder echoed in my mind, but trying never seemed enough. Yet, in that cramped room, I found a quiet strength. I read library books late into the night, taught myself to sketch better, and promised myself I'd prove my worth, even if no one else saw it. The forest outside my old window was gone, but I carried its stillness inside me, a seed of resilience taking root. I didn't know then that it would grow into something unbreakable, or that the shadows I lived in would one day teach me how to shine. In the dim corners of my childhood, where I'd learned to hide my hopes, a spark flickered when my grandparents walked through our door. Arthur and Helen, with their gentle smiles and worn photo albums, saw me when no one else did. As I teetered on the edge of adulthood, their belief became my lifeline, pulling me from the shadows of my parents' neglect into a world where I could finally breathe. Grandma Helen and Grandpa Arthur were rare visitors to our Salem home, their red brick house 40 miles away a warm contrast to our cold perfection. At 17, I was used to fading into the background, but their arrival for a family dinner felt like a lifeline. We sat around Mom's lasagna, the table heavy with Claire's chatter about her Stanford summer program. Claire, at 13, glowed under the chandelier, her private school SUV waiting outside. I picked at my plate, silent, until Helen's voice cut through. "Jasmine, what about you? College plans?" Her eyes, kind but piercing, held mine. For the first time that night, I felt seen. "I applied to the University of Oregon and UC Davis," I said, voice tentative. "Got into Oregon's business program, partial scholarship." Helen smiled, but Mom's fork clinked sharply, silencing the room. The air thickened as Mom set down her utensils, her voice tight. "Jasmine, we've talked. We can't help with tuition this year." I blinked, confused. "What?" Dad jumped in, rehearsed. "Claire's been invited to an Ivy League prep program. It's a rare chance." My heart sank like a stone in a well. "So the college savings you said were for both of us? Are for Claire?" Mom sighed, as if explaining to a child. "Claire has potential. You could start at community college, Jasmine, or work for a bit." The words stung, each one a confirmation of my place, always second. The room fell silent, save for Helen's spoon against her plate. "Linda," she said, low but firm, "both girls are my granddaughters. I can't watch one be cast aside." Mom's lips pursed, but Grandpa Arthur's voice boomed. "This is our business now." Later, as I cleared dishes, Helen found me in the kitchen, her hand warm on my shoulder. "You don't have to carry this anymore, Jasmine," she said. "We'll pay your tuition, all of it, no loans." My eyes stung, tears I'd held for years threatening to spill. "That's too much," I whispered. "Not when it's for someone who tries," she replied, smiling. "You've shown on your own." Grandpa joined us, his nod a quiet vow. That night, I lay in my cramped room. The laundry hummed a faint pulse, and I felt a shift. Their belief was a door opening, one I could walk through without looking back. When I left for college, Mom's hug was half-hearted, and Claire's eyes were glued to her phone. I dragged my suitcase across the lavender-lined path, the weight of their dismissal lifting with each step. Helen's words echoed. I didn't need favoritism to shine. For the first time, I believed her. Leaving the house where I'd been invisible, I stepped into a world that saw me. The University of Oregon became my canvas, and later, the gleaming offices of Bradley and Lane Capital my stage. From dorm rooms to boardrooms, I built a life not on approval, but on grit. A life that proved I was more than the afterthought I'd been raised to be. At 18, I arrived at Oregon's campus, my suitcase rattling over cobblestone paths. The dorms smelled of fresh paint, and the lecture halls buzzed with possibility. Free from Mom's sighs and Claire's spotlight, I thrived. My parents never called, but I didn't care. Every Sunday I phoned Helen and Arthur, their voices a tether to my worth. In business classes, my knack for strategy turned heads. Professors praised my case studies, friends sought my notes. I wasn't Claire's shadow here. I was Jasmine Carter, sharp and unyielding. Late nights in the library, I devoured marketing texts, my highlighter a wand conjuring a future. By junior year, I led the debate team, my arguments crisp, my confidence growing like ivy. I wasn't just surviving, I was building something real. Senior year, Dr. Elgin, my finance professor, changed everything. "Jasmine, you should apply to Bradley and Lane Capital's internship," he said, handing me a flyer. "Your mind's made for it." At 21, I walked into their Seattle office, heart pounding, facing 3 managers across a glass table. "What's key to an investment strategy?" one asked. "Data's only half the story," I replied. "You need the psychology behind it." They nodded, and I got the offer. That summer, I analyzed market trends, my desk buried in reports. When I graduated with honors, Bradley and Lane hired me full-time as a junior investment analyst. At 22, I was no longer the girl in the cramped room. I was a woman carving her place. 2 years later, at 24, I faced a test that defined me. Reviewing a high-net-worth portfolio, I spotted trouble. Tech stocks showed unnatural growth, their numbers too perfect against a shaky market. Colleagues saw breakout potential. I saw a trap. For 2 sleepless nights, I traced reports, uncovering inflated revenues, companies buying their products to fake sales. If we didn't act, we'd lose $32 million in client funds. On Monday, I walked into the executive boardroom, my 42-page analysis trembling in my hands. "We need to pull out," I said, projecting risk simulations on the screen. No one interrupted. When I finished, the CFO leaned back, stunned. "She just saved the company," he told the CEO. "Within days, we restructured the portfolio, avoiding disaster." 6 months later, the firm reported 11.4% growth, the highest in 7 years. My name echoed in the halls, no longer a whisper. That victory fueled my next leap. After hours, I built Prism, a risk-scoring system blending market data with consumer psychology, social media trends, and global shifts. At first, it was my private obsession, coded on my laptop in a dim apartment. But when Prism predicted price swings in 3 major stock groups, before a trade war and a tech scandal, management took notice. By 26, I presented it to the board, my voice steady as it projected millions in savings. They integrated Prism into the firm's core strategy, outpacing 2 competitors. The CEO, Richard Langley, called me to his office. "Jasmine," he said, "we're naming you Chief Strategic Investment Officer." I could barely breathe. 4 years earlier, Mom had suggested community college. Now I lead a multi-million-dollar firm's strategy. Each late night, each bold choice, had led me here, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. I'd spent years building a life beyond the shadows of my family's neglect, my new title as Chief Strategic Investment Officer a beacon of what grit could achieve. Yet, when Mom offered to host a celebration in our old Salem house, a flicker of hope stirred. Maybe we could mend the past, but hope can be a cruel mirage. And that night, I faced a betrayal so brazen it demanded I finally speak my truth. At 26, I wanted a quiet gathering to mark my promotion, a moment to share with Grandma Helen, Grandpa Arthur, and a few trusted friends. Mom's voice on the phone was unusually warm. "Let us host, Jasmine. Make it intimate, reunite the family." I hesitated, memories of my cramped room and dismissed dreams resurfacing. But she pressed. "Send $3,500 for catering and decorations. I'll handle the rest." Hoping for a bridge across our divide, I transferred the money, trusting her to honor my milestone. A week later, I drove 40 miles from Seattle to Salem, the familiar lavender yard now a faint echo of childhood. Stepping into the house, I was struck by its transformation. White orchids adorned the tables, golden ribbons spiraled up the staircase, and the air carried the scent of gourmet canapes. It felt too grand for my modest vision, a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Claire descended the stairs in a red satin dress, her makeup flawless. A tall man at her side, Andrew, I later learned, her fiancé. Guests gathered, their murmurs rising. I spotted Helen and Arthur by the bar, their smiles grounding me. As I raised my glass to speak, Mom stood abruptly, her beam fixed on Claire. "Dear family," she announced, "we're here to celebrate something truly special. Claire and Andrew's engagement." Cheers erupted, glasses clinking. I froze, the champagne heavy in my hand. My eyes met Mom's. She looked through me as if I were a stranger at my event. Dad intercepted me, his grip tight on my wrist. "Don't ruin this, Jasmine," he hissed. "Make a scene and you're cut off. No contact, no inheritance." His words were steel, but I pulled free, my heart pounding with a resolve I'd honed over the years. I could have walked away, let them bask in their charade. But the girl who'd once stayed silent in a cramped room was gone. I stepped to the room's center, glass raised, voice steady. "Excuse me, everyone. May I have a moment?" Eyes turned, Claire pausing mid-step, Mom's brow creasing. This gathering was to celebrate my promotion to Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Bradley and Lane Capital. I sent the $30,500 for this event, which Mom agreed to organize. She never mentioned it would become an engagement party. Murmurs rippled, guests shifting uncomfortably. "I'm not against Claire's happiness," I continued, "but I won't stay silent when my family erases my moment, as they did my entire childhood." Andrew turned to Claire, confusion in his eyes. "You said this was a family gathering." Claire flushed. "I was waiting for the right time," she stammered. "By using your sister's money?" he pressed, setting his glass down and walking out. Claire chased him, her heels echoing. The room fell silent, a suffocating hush. Dad's face reddened. "Know your place, Jasmine," I cut him off. "This place is built on favoritism. It's not a home." Helen and Arthur stood firm, their eyes shimmering. Then Grandpa spoke, his voice a bronze bell. "If you're cutting Jasmine out, it's time we clarify something." Helen stepped forward. 3 months ago, we updated our will. The estate, house, savings, shares go to Jasmine. Mom gasped. "What?" Arthur's gaze was steady. "She's the only one who never demanded, never stepped on others to rise." Claire's sobs broke the silence, her red dress flaring as she fled upstairs. Mom trembled and Dad turned away. I clutched my purse, heart swelling, and walked out with my grandparents, the spring breeze carrying apple blossoms. This time, I held my head high. Walking out of that house, I closed a chapter written in pain and opened one defined by peace. At 26, I'd faced my family's betrayal and emerged whole, not because I'd won their approval, but because I'd chosen myself. 2 years later, as I led a firm and a life I'd built from nothing, I learned that true worth isn't inherited, it's forged. After that night, I never returned to Salem. Mom, Dad, and Claire faded from my life, their absence a relief. I poured my energy into Bradley and Lane, refining Prism's algorithm on the 19th floor, where Seattle's skyline glittered beyond my window. Early mornings and late nights, I guided my team through volatile markets, each decision a testament to the strength I'd found. Richard Langley, our CEO, announced his retirement in my second year. To my shock, he named me his successor. At 28, I stood in the main hall, cameras flashing, as the youngest female CEO in the firm's 60-year history. "Jasmine represents a new generation," Richard said. I called Helen and Arthur from my office, my voice thick. "I did it." Grandpa laughed, Helen's words a balm. "You've always been worthy, from day one." 40 miles away, Claire's life unraveled. At 25, she wore no engagement ring. Her ventures, a fashion course, a brief stint as a content creator, abandoned. She'd moved back to Mom and Dad's, sleeping in the room she'd once taken from me. Sometimes, Helen mentioned their questions about me through mutual friends, but I felt no pull to reconnect. One spring afternoon, as I left a strategy meeting, I saw Claire in our lobby, her designer coat stark against her uncertain gaze. "I'm not here to apologize," she said, voice sharp. "How do you do so well without anyone lifting you?" I met her eyes, calm. "I had nothing, Claire. That's when I learned to stand alone." She stared, then turned and left, her heels clicking into silence. I wished her no ill, but I'd never again yield to keep her peace. Every Sunday I drove to Helen and Arthur's red brick home, where we toasted bread and flipped through old photos. Helen recounted my childhood mischief, Arthur pretending to forget so I'd retell each tale. Once I asked if they regretted leaving me their estate. "It's not about the money," Helen said, her hand over mine. "We left it to the one who chose integrity over convenience, silence when it mattered, voice when it counted." Her words settled deep, the greatest inheritance, faith in myself. In my office, I led my team to build something new, each step a reminder that no matter where you start, the path is yours to shape. I was once overlooked, my celebrations stolen, but I rose not from spite, but from truth. Today, I stand among those who see me, and more importantly, I see myself. Standing in my Seattle office, the city's lights a mosaic beyond the glass. I trace the arc of my journey from a forgotten child to a CEO who commands boardrooms. The lesson carved into my soul by years of neglect and triumph is this: my worth is not tethered to others' approval, but forged in the quiet fire of my resolve. In that Salem house, where Mom's sighs and Claire's spotlight taught me to shrink, I could have let their dismissal define me. Instead, I learned to seek validation within. Each step, every late-night study session, every bold risk like Prism, a brick in the foundation of my self-belief. The night I spoke at that stolen party, I didn't just reclaim my moment. I claimed my voice, understanding that truth, not silence, sets you free. Helen and Arthur's faith showed me that love doesn't demand perfection, but honors effort. Claire's unraveling, a shadow of her own choices, taught me that entitlement erodes while perseverance builds. Now, at 28, I lead not to prove others wrong, but to prove myself right, knowing that the only validation that endures is the one I grant myself. This lesson, hard-won through tears and triumphs, is my compass. No matter how others overlook you, your path is yours to shape, and your worth is yours to define.